Hello. So I thought we would recap the first 2 weeks very quickly just to see where we are and remember how the history is going. And little update. In the first week, we talked about how mankind always danced, even in primitive times, how there came to be many different styles of folk dances reflected in each country's culture, how ballet started out in court dances among the nobility of Europe, and as it became more and more complex, it was taken up by professionals and became a theatrical language. How it was first developed the furthest by the French, and how this form of theatrical dance, known as ballet, thrived in Paris. And from the 1830s to the 1850s, when the Romantic movement in all the arts was at its height, ballet really took off and became much closer to what we know it today, and away from social dances that it started out as. So we spoke about the famous ballerinas of the Romantic period, including Marie Taglioni, and Carlotta Grisi. And Taglioni was the originator of Giselle, which was the first Romantic ballet and the first ballerina, supposedly, allegedly, to go on pointe for the first time. And then how Giselle, 9 years later, there was quite a bit more point work then, and Carlotta Grisi danced Giselle. And then we talked about how the Bournonville La Solfède took over from the Taglioni La Solfède, that the Taglioni La Solfède was lost, and that the Bournonville was preserved by the Danish in Copenhagen. And then we watched the second act of La Solfède, and I told you that that was the closest we would ever know what they danced like in the Romantic times, because that choreography was very, very carefully preserved by the Danish dancers and ballet masters. And of course, nobody danced like they dance today, but the style and the choreography, nothing was changed. Then in week 2, we talked about how classical ballet grew out of the Romantic period, and that most of the major breakthroughs in that area took place in Russia, starting in the 1860s, and how the great choreographer Marius Petipa created many full-length story ballets, culminating in The Sleeping Beauty and Swan Lake, and dominating the latter half of the 19th century. Then we talked briefly about Diaghilev at the turn of the century, and how the company was in Paris for 20 years, from 1909 to 1929, and where the three major choreographers, he had many other choreographers, including Nijinsky actually choreographed a couple of ballets for Diaghilev, and Nijinsky's sister Nijinska also did a very famous work called Les Noces. But the three main choreographers during the 20 years of Diaghilev, in order, were Fokine, Massine, and Balanchine, and how each one, working with designers and composers and libretticists, came up with ideas that really took ballet into the 20th century. And then we took a little detour, and I showed you the Mors Pavane, and that's how we finished last week, which was based on Othello, and by the modern dance choreographer José Limón, and I explained how it was danced by many choreographers, many dancers, both ballet and modern. And what's interesting to me still about, I want to talk a little bit more about the Mors Pavane, is that the use of gesture, all of the gestures that he came up with told the story, because now we're going to, this week, talk about a couple other choreographers. We're going to talk about Anthony Tudor and Frederick Ashton. And Frederick Ashton was, they were both English, Ashton and Tudor, but Ashton spent his entire career in London at the Royal Ballet, and he choreographed many ballets for Margot Fonteyn, who was his muse, and Ashton helped develop the English school and the English style with the woman who founded the company, whose name was Nanette de Valois. And I'm not going to show you an example of Ashton's choreography, but if you're interested in knowing a little bit more about the English school and the Royal Ballet and Frederick Ashton, you can actually look on Google. If you Google Frederick Ashton, a ton of stuff comes up. If you Google the Royal Ballet, a lot of other stuff comes up. I'm going to talk a little bit about Anthony Tudor, who started his career in London and who made his most famous ballet actually in London before he came to America, and he worked with American Ballet Theater in America, in New York, right across the street from Balanchine, who was obviously the founder and director of the New York City Ballet. Tudor's most famous ballet was a ballet called Lilac Garden. It initially had a title in French, even though it was first performed in England, and that was Jardin aux Lilas. Jardin is the garden, and the lilas of the lilacs. But it's come down to America to be known as Lilac Garden, and there's a sort of the reason that I'm showing it is because Tudor was the person who took ballet in a very psychological direction. He was very interested in psychology and psychiatry, and the two main founders of psychoanalysis were Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung. Does everybody know those names by any chance? What's going on? Yes? And that would be interesting if you don't know them. That's something also to look up. But anyway, the psychiatry, psychoanalysis, basically psychology, gives motives to what people do. And it talks about their inner thoughts. And that's how Tudor modernized ballet, because you could actually see the inner thoughts. You saw the steps and you saw the situation that the characters were in, but you also saw their inner thoughts. And interestingly enough, Le Mans, who choreographed the Mort Pavant in 1949, I'm sure was also influenced by Tudor, because you can see the inner thoughts of the characters in the Mort Pavant. And I'm going to show you a 10-minute excerpt today of Lilac Garden. And I'll talk over it a little bit because it skips forward and it's not the whole ballet. But if you ever get a chance to see the whole ballet, this is the French version from the Paris Opera. And a very famous French ballerina who retired maybe 10 or 15 years ago, named Sylvie Guillem, and that's who's dancing. And I picked that because the other one, there was only one that had all of it, and I didn't know those people, and I was watching it. I wasn't crazy about their interpretation, but if you ever get a chance to see the Lilac Garden live, you should do that. Let me see where I am here. So Tudor didn't use a lot of port-de-bras, although he did use it, but very discretionary. And everything moved from the body, from the torso, and there was no bravura movement, but it was a very poetic sense of dance, and between that and the psychological underpinnings, that's how he modernized ballet. Whereas Balanchine, who we're going to talk about next week in much more detail, modernized ballet, took it forward in a more technical way. He expanded the rigid formality the way dancers moved in the 19th century, and he lengthened the line, he increased the speed, he had modern dance influences, and he took ballet to a completely new place, especially the technical aspects, without sacrificing his dedication to the classical ballet and the art form he loved that was developed by Petipa, and Balanchine was a great admirer of Petipa. So the story of Lilac Garden is a young woman whose name is Caroline, is about to be married to an older man who possesses wealth and standing in the society, even though she is in love with a young man closer to her own age and would prefer to be with him. The only character that has a name in the ballet is Caroline. Then the man she must marry is just called in the program the man she must marry. And Tudor did that on purpose because he was talking about the psychological aspects. So she knows that there's a man she must marry. And then I forget what the young man is called, but maybe he's just called the young man. And the man she must marry also had a previous relationship. And I forget what she was called too. Hold on, I knew this yesterday, but I can't keep anything in my head anymore at my age. Oh, she was called An Episode from His Past. And but she's still very much there at the party. So the whole thing takes place at a garden party, and it's on the afternoon of the evening that they're going to get married. And then there's a whole group of core dancers who interact between the principals, and everything that they do is furtive, because they can't. They have to be very careful that they're not seen, because at any moment, even though they're in a garden and they're in a little private place, some other people could come by and interrupt them and catch them doing what they're doing. So they have to be very furtive and very careful how they go about relating to each other. So the psychological state of mind of each character, that what each character is going through, is as important as the actual events taking place, and all this is expressed in the choreography. So now I'm going to show you the 10 minutes of Lilac Garden. And Zolly's coming over to do the technical aspect. So that's Caroline and the man she must marry. And this, they just cut. And now that's the episode from The Man She Must Marry's past, the woman with the feather. And that's the young man she's in love with. fading much later. Shadow play. Feeling with a great So in between each of these encounters between the two lovers is the core, and the core dances, and they're happy at the party. And so this is a picture, but it's a moment out of time. Time stops for a moment. And then now you see her thoughts. And you see that she really wants to be with him, but she knows she can't. And now time resumes. And he brings her a little lilac as the last and parting gesture. And there are 4 couples there that she says goodbye to. And he's left alone.
Okay, you can start talking.
Okay, so there are a lot of similarities in the use of gesture between the Amours Pavant and the Lilac Garden. Could everybody see that? Yes? Good. And both, so as I said, Tudor modernized ballet by adding that psychological element. And then the next generation, there were another 2 Englishmen. One was named Kenneth Macmillan and the other one was named John Cranko. And Kenneth Macmillan became the director of the Royal Ballet, and John Cranko wanted to become the director of the Royal Ballet, but there only could be one director. So he went to Stuttgart and he became the director there in Germany. And he really revived the fortunes of the Stuttgart Ballet. And interestingly enough, they both made a Romeo and Juliet, a full-length Romeo and Juliet, the one in London and the one in Stuttgart. And Macmillan made his first, but just a couple of years later, Cranko made his. But actually, both of them made it about 10 years after the original version that was choreographed in Russia. That was a collaboration between the composer Dmitry Prokofiev and the choreographer Lavrovsky. And Leonid Lavrovsky was the best choreographer during the Soviet early times of the Soviet ballet. So I don't know how many of you know your world history, but in 1917 there was a revolution in Russia, and the communists took over and it became the Soviet Union, and they took over a lot of countries, including Poland and Hungary and many others. And then we had a Cold War. But the Russian ballet the Mariinsky Ballet, which was also the Royal Imperial Ballet in St. Petersburg, was renamed the Kirov Ballet after a Russian revolutionary named Kirov, and then the city of St. Petersburg, which was named after Peter the Great, was renamed Leningrad after the first premier. Vladimir Lenin was the first premier of the Soviet Union. I'm going to show you a little bit, a little experiment. I'm going to show you the balcony pas de deux from Romeo and Juliet. I'm not going to show you the original Lavrovsky, but actually, if you'd like to see it after you see these three versions that I'm going to show you, there's a very famous film from 1955. The original Juliet was a very famous Russian ballerina named Galina Ulanova, and there's a film, a 1955 film that the Soviets made, and if you go on YouTube, you can see that. You can see the balcony pas de deux from the Lavrovsky original production. Ulanova, unfortunately, was quite old, really old, when she filmed it. But you still get an idea of what the original one was like. But it was modernized in a very good way, first by Kenneth Macmillan, who was sort of heir to Ashton. And he choreographed it for two young dancers at the Royal Ballet, but the two most famous dancers for the Royal Ballet, Margot Fonteyn and Rudolf Nureyev, actually made a movie of this version, and this is what I'm going to show you today, Fonteyn and Nureyev. Then we're going to have the Kranko version with Kranko's muse, whose name was Marcia Haydé, and her partner, who also became her husband, Richard Cragen. And that they also were they were internationally famous dancers, the stars of the Stuttgart Ballet, but then they danced all over the world. And then lastly, I'm going to show you the version that I choreographed when I came to Raleigh in 1998, and I choreographed it for Melissa Podkasy, who you saw do the Sylph in La Sulfita, and then you saw actually do the Desdemona in the Morse Pavane. And the Moor in the Morse Pavane was Timur Bordasenkov, who was the sort of founding male principal dancer in Carolina Ballet and was the star of Carolina Ballet for the first 10 years. And the two of them are doing my version from 1998 that was filmed for UNC TV, the North Carolina Public Television. And the reason I'm doing this is that I wanted you to see how three different choreographers thought about the same piece of music, and the music was written specifically by Prokofiev to express this feeling of the love of these two people that was just the beginning of the relationship. They met at the ball earlier that evening, and then she's standing on her balcony looking out many hours later. She couldn't sleep. She gets up, she goes out on her balcony, and she's hoping that maybe he'll come by. And she says the famous line from Shakespeare, "Romeo, oh Romeo, where art thou, my Romeo?" And then he appears, and then she comes down from the balcony, and they dance very passionately together. This love at first sight, this first bloom of passionate love that these two young people have for each other, and that's what's expressed in what's called the balcony pas de deux in Romeo and Juliet. And so you'll see the Macmillan, and then you'll see the Kranko, and then you'll see mine. And what's interesting, I think, is that all three express the same thing, but they all do it in a slightly different way. And all three couples are expressing the same thing, but not only is the choreography a little bit different, but how they relate to each other in this bloom of first love is also a little bit different, each couple. So I thought that would be an interesting experiment for you to look at and to see how sort of choreography gets created in the mind of each choreographer. So we're going to just show all three of them and we'll talk about it afterwards.
You want Noriega and Fontaine?
First, yeah.
Okay. You guys can see this?
How come they're still in the middle of the screen? Ah.
Rick, you can talk.
Hmm?
You can talk. Ricky,
Oh,
you can
well,
talk.
yes, okay, well, we're looking for the other one.
No, do you want to just go to the other one?
Oh, no, I just want to go to the other one.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Next one.
I mean, I can actually say, so she was 47 years old when she was playing 16. There, in that film. He was in his mid-20s, but she was actually 47 years old. And the artistry is amazing, I think, because she convinces you that she's a young girl. And that look of innocence before he kisses her at the end of the pas de deux is extraordinary. You just can't believe that, but she relies on all her artistry to convince you of that. And that's in a film. If you saw her, I saw her do it on the stage. And it's even more amazing on the stage because you're not close up like that. And she really was an amazing artist. You know, she had a whole new career with Nureyev. She went through 4 different principal male partners. And all men, the men retired, and only she lasted.
This power of women, right?
So here's Marcia Hayday and Richard Craig in the Cranko version. Marcia Hayday is actually in her 30s, her early 30s.
Okay. Last, but certainly not least.
There's a little bit of talking here because it was put on for the TV audience.
Hold on. Guys, you see this one?
Juliet is on her balcony, thinking of Romeo,
Yeah?
when he appears below.
Okay. Right.
Romeo, Romeo,
When it's done,
wherefore
I
art
have to
thou
go.
Romeo?
You can handle it.
Deny thy father, and refuse thy name.
Jeez.
Yea, if thou wilt not, be but sworn my love, and thou no longer be a Capulet.
The two declare their love and depart with a promise to marry the following.
Can you guys see anything?
Anthony, it's right here. Can you see it? No? Oh, Lord.
Did you see the other one?
Yeah, I saw it.
Yeah, I saw the other two. They're amazing.
Wait 1 second. I don't know why I can't open this up.
I just want to say one more time, that's why I didn't want to do this by myself.
Wiggy, if you had figured it out on the down by yourself, I wonder. Hold on. Okay, wait, here we are. I think share, new share. There. Do you see this? Okay, thanks.
Perfect.
Right?
Yeah, uh-huh, yeah. That was fine.
Oh. I can't get it back now. I mean, I like Melissa by far the most. All right, guys. Ricky's gonna talk for a minute. Okay.
So I also will tell you that Melissa was 41 when she made that. And that was also, I thought, pretty amazing. So, do you want to ask me some questions about, did you see I mean, it was the same music, the same idea, a lot of the same, all the same feelings, but different choreography.
I have a couple questions.
Okay, good.
Well, I was wondering, did you ever dance the pas? Guesting or whatever, I don't know.
No, I never did. I never did Romeo and Juliet. I never did a lot of the classics. I danced Don Q pas de deux, but I never danced, and I danced Corsair pas de deux. But I never danced Giselle. I never danced. I was in New York City Ballet. I never got to do Romeo and Juliet or Giselle or Sleeping Beauty. Yeah. And the other question?
Well, it wasn't, the second thing isn't really a question, but I noticed that your choreography, I feel, was very much from the point of view of like a dancer. And I thought that was really interesting.
Well, actually, Macmillan and Cranko were both dancers too. So, yeah, I mean, I actually don't think you could be a choreographer if you never danced. You don't need to be to be a good choreographer. You don't need to be a principal dancer. And Balanchine was not a principal dancer, and Ashton was actually a pretty bad dancer, and Pettipat wasn't a very good dancer. But they were all dancers. They all understood the technique. You don't have to be a great dancer, but you have to be you really do have to be a dancer. Yeah. Anybody else want to talk about what they saw or what they thought about when they were watching? All right. Well, next week we're going to see some Balanchine, and before we do, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what happened then with Balanchine and with a little bit what happened after Balanchine. But before we even get into that next week, I'm going to ask everybody to show me a little choreography in your space. Nothing elaborate, but I'm going to give you a little exercise, and we'll ask for volunteers. So think about that, and that's how we're going to start off. That's how we're going to start off next week. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you one more time next week. Thanks.